Rama Rama Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shri Vaishnavinda ki
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sadhajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vikam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, we are nearing the end of our study of this second chapter that we have been studying for some time now. And the title of this chapter is Contents of the Gita Summarized. So we are getting a full summary of the Bhagavad Gita in this second chapter. Right in the beginning, Krishna is giving us a synopsis of everything. And we are in this section where Arjuna is inquiring about the person who has found divine consciousness. And we are all looking for divine consciousness. We want this eternal happiness and peace. And so Krishna began to answer Arjuna's 4 questions. And we are now in this final question, which is, what does he do? If we don't engage our senses in all the material items around us, we find happiness from within, detached from all these engagements. And what do we do? What does one do in this sthita prajna? It's a logical question. And Krishna, in the verse we'll discuss next week, gives this very nice he says in verse 69, what is night for all beings, is a time of awakening for the self-control. And the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective sage. It means the materialists and spiritualists are on opposite ends of the spectrum. What is night for one, Bhaktivedanta, is enlightening for the introspective sage. And what is day for the materialist, some party or movie, for the introspective sages, have opposite tastes. And we see this as we progress from our material allurements to our spirit. We think, wow, everything's turned upside down. And what I used to find pleasurable no longer, and at some point becomes, wow, it's actually displeasurable. We go from neutral to displeasurable, and conversely there. So we have to decide which end of the spectrum am I going to go on. Which is the spectrum I want to participate in. And Krishna is saying, detaching from sense enjoyment, you will find real happiness, permanent happiness. But for the materialist, it's like the opposite. What could be more miserable? So we'll discuss that concept next week. So the key theme of this section again is controlling the senses. We've been talking over and over and over and over again about this theme. And controlling the senses does not mean stopping the senses, right? We have to use them. So Krishna today is going to tell us, and Prabhupada in his purpose is going to tell us how to use the senses, or how we must use the senses intelligently. So throughout this section, throughout our life, we have to view everything from this perspective of, I am spirit soul. If we are looking through the wrong set of lenses, everything will become distorted. If I see everything as I am this body, then all of my decisions I make in relation to that perspective will lead to frustration, disappointment, stress, fear, anxiety. All those things that we want to get rid of. That is what will come. So we must remember and approach all the things we are trying to see from that perspective. I am spirit soul. So last week in the verses, Krishna began to speak about the path to happiness. And he said the path to happiness begins with transcendental intelligence. What does transcendental intelligence mean? Sounds like a fancy term, does it not? But what does transcendental intelligence mean?
Knowledge of the Vedas.
Knowledge of the Vedas, okay. Transcendental to what? Right? Transcendental means above.
Material, above material.
Above material intelligence. Does something exist above material intelligence? Is there something beyond the PhD degree from Harvard University? Is there something beyond knowledge of how to make enormous amounts of wealth? How to beautify the body? How to engage in so many... Is there something beyond that? And we know the knowledge of the soul is superior to the knowledge of the body. So there's this knowledge of the soul that begins our path to happiness. Without it, we can have knowledge about everything about how this material world works. And none of it will give us happiness. Why? Because the transcendental knowledge is what leads to a steady mind. A steady mind occurs when we no longer wish for anything more. We have everything we want. Then the mind will no longer hanker. I wish I had what the neighbors had. I wish what I had this. I wish this. I wish that. So the transcendental intelligence is what leads to a steady mind. And when the mind is steady, then there can be peace. And Krishna said, without peace, how can there be happiness? So this is the means, the path And the introspective stage, the spiritualist understands this very clearly. That it is not through the IIT and Harvard degrees that is going to give happiness. It is through understanding this transcendental knowledge. So they think as parents, we have so much emphasis on getting our children highly educated into the best of education. But our end goal for getting our children educated is so that they can be happy. So what kind of intelligence is going to give them happiness? It is a PhD in this. Yeah, we need material knowledge. We need the material intelligence to accomplish certain things in this world. But it must be in relation to transcendental knowledge. And that's why we're gathering here. So this was explained. And Krishna said, there is no other way. He said, one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can neither have transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be happiness without peace? So Krishna is saying, there is no other way. This is it. This is it. So now, how to remain fixed in this knowledge, fixed in this understanding, determined. We'll discuss this week. Someone would like to read the 67th verse?
As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambrisha, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind.
So what is Krishna warning us of in this verse?
Even one sense is good enough to carry away the intelligence.
Carry away
Mind senses.
the intelligence, right? What happens when a man's or a woman's intelligence is lost?
They will die.
Remember, from sense attachment to lust, anger, greed, these cycle and ultimately fall down. So one can think that, Krishna is using the example of the wind carrying away a boat. Even one of the roaming senses can bring away one's intelligence. So what is the instruction for us?
Engage in Krishna consciousness.
Engage all the senses. We ask sometimes this question: what's the harm? There's some material. What's the harm in watching this? What's the harm in eating this? What's the harm in hearing this? What's the harm? What is the harm? Even one sense can carry away the whole. Right? It's very, very precarious. Anybody faced with this? I put into Google temptation, and this picture came up, and I thought, wow, it is perfect. It is perfect. It carries forth all the temptations. And what is difficult about this situation?
What to choose? What to choose?
What to choose? Okay? That's one level of difficulty.
What is good for me?
What is good for me? Which of these are good for you? Huh?
We need.
But which of them are good for you?
Okay.
Any of them? But which of these we have been trying to chase our whole life? All of them. Maybe one we haven't. Virtually all of them, right? Virtually all of them. So the challenge becomes, as we acquire knowledge, that this is bad for me. Okay, I have conceptually understood that these things are not good for me. Why? Because material objects lead to lust, which lead to attachment. It just, the cycle continues. I'm always frustrated. Great, I can explain it to them. But what's the problem? Implementation. The implementation of it is difficult. Why? Because of the temptations. And we know one roaming sense can wipe away everything. Everything. It's very difficult. Right? So it's so hard to resist. I saw one quote. I can make perfect decisions everywhere except for in the face of temptation. It was a very, very brilliant thought. I can make perfect decisions everywhere except for in the face of temptation. This is speaking to the strength of our senses. The intelligence says, don't do it. But the senses in the mind become so powerful that they sweep one away. So we think, what's the harm? Well, the harm is everything starts small and it builds. Just like if you're standing on top of a hill and you have a small snowball and you start rolling it down the hill. As it makes progress, what happens? It grows and grows and grows. It builds. It builds. And it ultimately leads to problems. So how to solve this? Is there a way to fight the temptation? Is there a way to win?
Well, we can always control them.
We can always control them. By doing what? By having good willpower. Right? But what is the problem with trying to control them through good willpower?
Temporary.
Temptation comes back.
Why do most diets fail?
Chocolate. Taste of
The taste remains. We can resist for some time. But the only way to truly
It's because the slide
lose the temptations is to do what? We talked about it earlier in this section. In a higher taste. The temptation for these things won't be there when the temptation for something higher exists. Otherwise, if I don't replace the attachment to these things with something sweeter, I'll never lose these temptations. Yeah, I may temporarily suppress them, but unless I replace it, it won't happen. If you go to a website about quitting smoking, it's a hard temptation to do.
Okay, I will check.
So what do they say? You have to replace it with something else. Chew bubble gum. Go for a walk. Do something to replace that activity. Because if you don't replace it, it won't go. Eating sweets. They say don't eat sweets, eat fruits. There's some replacement needed. Right? So the only way to overcome this, Prabhupada is saying, is unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord Every one of them engaged in sense, any one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate one from the path. So we have this choice. Am I going to engage my senses in all of these different activities? Or am I going to engage my senses in Krishna? And the only means to find real happiness is to engage our senses exclusively, all of them, in Krishna consciousness. And the only way we'll do that is if the sweetness, the taste we get from engaging our senses in Krishna are more pleasurable than the taste we get of engaging our senses in all the material things. That's it. So we already know the taste of material activities. We've been tasting for so many years, so many lifetimes. So now we think how to engage the senses in Krishna. And thus the
How about now, Prabhu?
senses will become very controlled. And who is a great example of such a person? Ambarish Maharaj. What was Ambarish Maharaj's position? King. King of what?
Universe.
Huh? King of the whole planet. How many sense enjoying temptations would a king of the whole planet have? A few? Unlimited. He was king. He was an unrivaled king, let's explain. Unrivaled means there was no one threatening his rule. He was such a great king. Yet was he tempted? Did he have any taste? What did he do? With all of his senses. He was fully engaged in serving the Supreme Lord. They said the head is used to bow down to the Lord. The legs are used to walk to all of the holy places. His hands will be used to sweep the temple. His nose to smell the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to the Lord. The eyes to see the beautiful deity form of the Lord. And like that, all of his senses were fully engaged. And what was the end result? Perfect transcendental happiness and peace. In the midst of being a king. Sometimes we think, oh, this devotional life is possible, but for those who can be full-time in the temple. Ambarish Maharaj was full-time in the palace, serving. Yet his senses were 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness. So resisting the temptation is difficult until we can replace it with something better. That dry, stale chapati tastes good until you have experienced the taste of the hot roti, cholesterol-free puri. Then it's very easy to resist the temptation. So similarly, in Krishna consciousness, once we experience the bliss of Krishna consciousness, everything becomes very easy. Krishna says in the next verse, therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. It means one's intelligence is never shaken. Because we know one roaming sense can destroy everything. But one who's come to Krishna consciousness finds sense control to be very easy. Very easy. Just like, we give always example of if you have a $5 bill and I'm giving you a $20 bill in exchange, how difficult is it to control your attachment to $5 bills? Is it difficult?
Not at all.
Not at all. It's simple. It's easy. But if you don't have $20 bills, how hard is it to detach from those $5 bills? Yeah, it's impossible. Very difficult. So the means to conquering the seemingly difficult attachments to material objects is to come with a higher power. That $5 bill looks nothing in the face of the $20 bill. Just using a mundane example. So, Prabhupada comments in the purport to 68, one can curb the forces of sense gratification only by the means of Krishna consciousness. You know, in various spiritual practices, they talk about controlling the senses, you know, doing some meditation. These artificial means of controlling the senses are with something more substantial. I can just drop it, forget it. It's okay, more important to focus here. So, I lost my train of thought. So, Prabhupada is saying here that only by Krishna consciousness one can control. These artificial means of controlling the senses aren't going to work. And that is why Krishna has given us this most wonderful formula. Which he says, it doesn't matter what you are attached to. Whatever your material attachments are, it doesn't matter. You can practice bhakti. Just start. By adding Krishna to your life, you will naturally subtract out all of these attachments. He doesn't say, you first give up all these temptations, then I will give you the sweetness of bhakti. Think, how many people would sign up for that program? Anyone? It's hard. So Krishna knows. He's so compassionate. He says, don't worry. You just start. You add a little bit of bhakti to your life. And let the taste of bhakti propel you into the transcendental realm. And you will naturally lose the attachment to all of these. So we just have to bring our senses in contact with Krishna. But that is a decision we have to make. So how do we bring our senses practically in contact with Krishna? What are some things we can do? What are some practical ways? Because Prabhupada and Krishna are saying the only way to control the senses is by Krishna consciousness. And the only way to find happiness is to control the senses. You get that? The only way to find happiness is to control the senses. And the only way to control the senses is Krishna consciousness. But we always ask, is there any other way? What are my other options? There is no other way. And there is no better way either. Because this is the sweetest of ways. So how do we engage our senses in Krishna? What are some practical ways we do so? Eating prasadam. So let's take you to eating prasadam. What senses are we engaging?
Tongue.
Anybody finds difficulty in eating? No? Notice one thing. Nobody yawns during prasadam time. Nobody's legs get tired. Nobody's ever fallen asleep in prasadam time. It's pleasurable. It's enjoyable. Anybody has honored prasadam says, this tastes out of this world. There's a taste to prasadam that's inexplicable. If you give prasadam to someone who has no knowledge, they'll ask, what's in this? It's something extra. What is in it? It is Krishna's mercy that's in it. Direct mercy is being tasted as we honor Krishna prasadam. That's why we say we honor prasadam. We don't eat prasadam. We're honoring the remnants and direct mercy of Krishna. That's one way. You had said? How else can we engage our senses?
Come to the association.
Come to the association. What senses are we engaging? Many, but what one main sense we are engaging right now at least?
Hearing.
Hearing. We all want to hear something. Two people are talking. Nada. I want to hear what they are saying. There's a natural curiosity. You want to hear. You go into the car, immediately put something on to hear. Right? How many people you see walking around, they have something glued in their ears? Why? Want to hear something. They're always looking to hear something. Music, this, politics, gossip, whatever it is. But when we hear about Krishna, then the heart really becomes enthused and engaged. We hear about the science of Krishna consciousness. We hear about the beauty of Krishna. We see through our ears everything about the Supreme Lord. And that is why Shravanam is the first of the 9 processes that Prahlad Maharaj said in executing devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Shmaranam. Shravanam, hearing, so powerful. Because by hearing, we can achieve. And when we hear transcendental subject matters, those sound vibrations enter the eardrum and they penetrate into the heart and reach the soul. Even if we don't know what we are hearing, still there is value because of its transcendental sound vibrations, not ordinary sound vibrations. So we can engage the sense that need to hear also in Krishna. What other practical ways can we engage the senses? Chanting. Vacho Vegam. Rupa Goswami says we must control the urge to speak. Everybody wants to speak. And they want to speak something. And so much nonsense is being spoken. But when we engage that urge to speak in glorifying Krishna, one finds great happiness. But we want to find ways to glorify ourselves. But actually using the tongue in glorifying Krishna gives the greatest happiness. Chanting is a glorification of Krishna. It is a uniting of Radha and Krishna. That is chanting. Very wonderful way to engage the tongue. So 2 ways we have engaged the tongue. Honoring Prasadam and chanting. What other senses how else can we engage our senses?
Going to
Reading
temple.
books.
Going to temple. What do we do when we go to the temple?
Seeing deities.
We see we all want to see beautiful things. Oh, look at this beautiful home, this beautiful statue, art, this beautiful person. We're all attached. But who is all attractive? Krishna. Krishna means he is the source of all beauty. All things that are beautiful come from the source of all beauty, Krishna. Krishna's beauty is so profound and unlimited that during Govardhan Leela, 7 days, the residents of Vrindavan were observing Krishna. And they were just fixed in seeing the beautiful form. Now you can imagine if you were standing fixed for 7 hours in front of some statue, in front of some painting, how your mind would be situated. how quickly we tire of the things we see materially. You go on a sightseeing tour. You work hours and hours and hours to climb someplace or go someplace or wait in line, and then you see 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes. And then, what's next? We tire. But Krishna, so beautiful, 7 days and 7 nights. The residents, and they could not satisfy, get to the bottom of their enjoyment. Their bliss from seeing Krishna on the 7th day was greater than the 6th day. And the 6th day greater than the 5th. Each moment, the happiness was increasing as they were seeing more and more of the Lord. Because He is the unlimited reservoir of Krishna. Of beauty, excuse me. There's no limit, no end. So if we want to see something beautiful, where we should take our eyes to see? Krishna. He's standing in the Devasadan Mandir, waiting for all of us to come and see Him. Each day He is decorated with beautiful jewels and clothes and garlands, giving His uninterrupted direction. So we can engage our senses by seeing Krishna in the temple. How else can we engage?
Smelling the flower which is offered to the deity.
Smelling the flowers. When the flower comes, we should take in the aroma of Krishna to purify this heart. Honor the flower. It is no just ordinary flower. Yes, in America these flowers have no smell. I can acknowledge that. But there is a transcendental smell in those flowers that have been offered to Krishna that we take in. So smelling the flowers. What else?
Reading books.
Reading books. You go onto the airplane or subway. Airplane no longer, because now everybody. But at least back in the day, everybody reads something. Some novel, some magazine, some newspaper. If you want something to read, so much we can read about Krishna. Srila Prabhupada has presented so many books that we can read. Anything else? Service. We can render practical service. Use our arms and legs and body in the service of Krishna. We can go and the Sunday feast presents so many opportunities to render service. We can serve prasad, we can prepare, we can clean up, we can sing and dance for the Lord. That is service. When you go into the temple room and we are singing and dancing, it is not as for our entertainment. It is a service to Krishna. Unlimited service. So like this, there are so many practical ways that we can engage our senses in Krishna consciousness. And they're very practical. Anything we discussed was difficult. It's difficult to eat prasadam. It's difficult to smell the flowers. It's difficult to come in here to read. Doesn't require any pre-qualification. But we should remember, only way to curb sense gratification is by experiencing the higher taste of Krishna. It is the only means. And thinking, yeah, I'm mostly engaged in allowing a sense or two to roam freely. It's very dangerous. Because it will pull away our intelligence. Our intelligence to know what is the ultimate real purpose of life. So we should be wary. Okay? So any questions, comments?
we talked about the higher taste, right? Why do we take so much time to really get the higher taste? If it is really higher, right? Why there's so many people are not acknowledging, or even us also take time to get that higher, right? Even though we are listening, we are hearing, we are trying to practice, we are trying, but still the taste doesn't come right. And all the materialistic thing, we get the taste very easily. We don't forget it also, even if we taste it one small time, right? One tiny moment. So why there's such a disparity in terms of...
It's a nice question. Why this takes so long if this is so straightforward? Well, it doesn't always. For some, as soon as they experience the bliss of Krishna, wow, what was I missing? So the taste or not a taste is up to us. It's our enthusiasm, faith, and in sincerity, right? The reason we hold on to our material attachments is only for one thing. We are fearful of trading it for something of lesser value. I hold on because I fear that I'll lose out on that taste and I won't gain something better. So how to overcome that fear? We have to jump in. We have to start experiencing Krishna consciousness. That's why there is a direct formula relationship to those. Prabhupada was brilliant in his systems he established. Those who come and experience the Sunday feast at the temple make very rapid progress in devotional life. It is a proven formula. Over and over and over. And there's a reason. Why? Because your senses are fully engaged and overloaded in the experience of bliss. And I had a friend, a very close friend, who started coming and was engaged in the philosophy. This all makes sense. This makes good sense. Logically, was all baby. And I would tell him, please come to the temple on Sundays. No, not going to come. And he would not come. He's like, I don't feel the need to come to the temple on Sunday. And finally, after lots of cajoling and pushing, and you could say like begging, he came. And then I knew that we needed something to keep him there. So I gave him some service. And it was the silliest of service. But it was a service. And because he's a very sweet person, he took it very seriously. And within a few weeks of experiencing the bliss of Krishna consciousness in this environment, years later have gone and he hasn't missed. But it takes that first full experience for several weeks to understand it. Because if we talk about it, you can't appreciate it. But when you experience it, you'll become overwhelmed with the world. So, how ready are we to follow the process that's laid out? That will define how quickly we'll experience the taste and we'll be able to move forward. So the formula is there, and we can see it in the history. It's so predictable. It's very direct. I'll say you very honestly. People will come to these sessions for years and they'll make progress, but it's very slow. But as soon as the senses and a more robust means are engaged, and all of you have experience. When you started coming and experiencing and rendering service, the whole Krishna consciousness enters a new realm. It enters a new realm. So how fast and ready are we to take it? And Rupa Goswami explains that this taste, he compares it to a jaundiced person. In India, we have some experience with jaundice. When you have jaundice, when you eat a sugar cube, what is the taste? How does it taste?
Bitter.
Bitter. And when you eat a bitter neem leaf, what is the taste?
Sweet.
Sweet. He says we are in jaundiced condition. The material world is bitter, but it tastes
Sweet.
sweet. Spiritual life is sweet, but it tastes bitter. So when you have jaundice, what is the cure for jaundice? You eat sugar cubes. The doctor will prescribe take sugar. But you're tasting what? Bitter. But eventually, what will you taste? The real sweetness. So Krishna conscious like that. Yeah, sometimes there's a bitter pill. But our taste, what is sweet is actually right now maybe tasting a little bitter. But what is bitter is tasting sweet because we are in a jaundice. What is that jaundice, he says? That is our avidya, our ignorance. Our ignorance of the real self. So just as the cure to jaundice is to take sugar pills, the cure to our avidya is to practice Krishna consciousness. Even at the moments where maybe there's an initial taste of some bitterness. Don't worry. Because what is sweet will eventually taste sweet when our ailments are cured. So, yeah, there may be some initial feelings of chanting, not so bitter. But try it. Do it. Driving 40 minutes to temple is bitter. But do it. You'll see. There's such a sweetness. But we have to cure our jaundiced condition. Rupa Goswami explains this in the Nectar of Instruction. He gives that example. Okay? Nice questions. Any other questions, comments?
So, Prabhu, like in one of the Prabhupada's lectures, I hear we are mad of sense gratification. so why are we mad of this? Though going through all these knowledge, but still some madness is there in certain things.
Yeah.
So,
because the senses are like venomous serpents. They're very strong. The senses are strong. And for long periods of time, we have been engaging our senses in matter. And the madness occurs because what we get out of that engagement is frustration. But we think then, let me get a little bit more and I'll be okay. So there is a madness in the mode of passion to get more. And Prabhupada always talks about the greatest sense attachment we have is sex life. The attachment between man and woman. So strong. And all society revolves around this attachment. 110% of all marketing uses that sense attachment to attract us to products. 100%. Even children's products is the sadness of today's life. Prabhupada says all the time, the world is virtually swimming in this. How to break it? The senses are strong, but Krishna consciousness is stronger. And remember, the strong senses, when they attach to Krishna, they become our best friend. They propel us so deeply into Krishna. When the eyes, which are so strong, can see the beauty of the Lord, they overwhelm us in this ocean of ecstasy. So the strong senses are not a bad thing. It's just where we're using them. That is the madness. And using our senses in material endeavors is madness from an external perspective. Why? Because every time I engage my senses in matter, I'm slapped. Every time. Every single time. The end result is a slap. And what do? I do it again. And I get slapped. And I do it again. And I get slapped. That is the definition of madness. Who's ready for prasadam now? That's just a reality. That's just a reality. Anything else?
So, related to his point, the perseverance and faith is the key, to continue Krishna consciousness, because everyone has got that independence. I think some people talk about due to karma, some people are engaged in this way, that way, but ultimately it is everyone's independence and perseverance and faith only, sustained perseverance and faith only takes us into this Krishna consciousness.
The perfect answer to his question is given by Rupa Goswami. Utsaha nishchaya dharya tattat karma pravartana. Sangha tyaga satovatihi sadbir bhakti prajnam. He says, if you want assured success in bhakti, how many of us would like assured success in bhakti? If you want assured success in bhakti, you follow these 6 principles and you're guaranteed success. But just prior to this verse, he gives you 6 principles. If you follow, you are assured failure in bhakti also. Verse 2, Rupa Goswami says, if you do this, you are assured to fail. But if you do these 6, you are assured to succeed. And what are those? The first 3 are really powerful. They're all powerful, but the 3 first 3. He says, Utsahan nishchaya daryat. Utsahan. We must be enthusiastic. Nothing we have accomplished in life, materially or spiritually, has come without some enthusiasm, some determination, some drive. But enthusiasm, it has to be coupled with nishchaya, which means confidence. And Rupa Goswami says we should be confident in 2 things. 2 things we must be confident in. The first, there is no other way but Krishna consciousness to achieve my goal of life, which is happiness. As I said it, there is no other way. And 2, Krishna's mercy and help will come. I should be confident in these 2 things. This is the only way, and Krishna will help me. If I am confident in these 2 things, then I can remain enthusiastic and determined. But I should also be daryat, patient. The result will come, but it won't come immediately. If I am confident, then I can be patient. If I know it's going to come, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait. And if I know this is the means, I'm confident, then I can be enthusiastic. If we are utsaha nishchaya daryat, you will find success in devotional life. So yes, we have to be enthusiastic. Nothing we gain comes without enthusiasm. But when it comes to bhakti, spiritual life, we want instant results. Krishna's Prabhupada will say, you have to be patient, but be confident along the way. It will come. And then he explains that, you must follow the principles. Tat karma pravartana. You must follow the principles of bhakti. You follow in the footsteps of the acharyas who have shown the way of bhakti. And you engage 24 hours, all the time. You avoid all other worldly association. These 6 things you do, you are assured success. Not maybe, high probability. He says assured success. And he says not success, he says complete success. So that's the formula.
But isn't that true in every case for that matter?
Yeah.
Sixth principle, irrespective of whether you're Krishna consciousness or
Yes.
whether you pay a simple devote to this table or create a statue or deity, whichever you believe in, and if you just apply the sixth principle, you
Yeah.
start getting energy from that. I mean, not necessarily it should be real or not. I mean, these are so strong, powerful. In materialistic world also, for example,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
any game.
You apply that to your
somebody's passion,
business, you'll be
yeah,
successful.
you'll be
No doubt.
successful.
But successful in the business.
Yeah, I mean,
But you won't be
whatever
successful
you apply,
in life.
Wherever
Of
you
course.
apply the sixth principle, I mean, you'll get the benefit out of that.
You can apply this entire Bhagavad Gita
Yeah.
to your material endeavors. The problem is, you won't get the desired result. What is the desired result from any endeavor? What is our single desired result from any endeavor?
Happiness.
No, I mean,
That's the only, no. It's the only thing you want from any endeavor you do.
possibly, just for the sake of discussion.
Yeah, we can discuss.
I mean, desired result could be whatever you set to achieve. I mean, if you perform an experiment or whatever, right?
Yeah, but the reason you're doing it is for some happiness. The why behind it. Not the what. You're saying the what, but the why. The why of any action is ultimately to get happiness. The what?
But as you said last time, right? The soul, our true nature
Yeah.
is happiness.
Of course.
And now we are seeking happiness because we are forget off.
We forgot our real
Forgot that
happiness.
word,
Yeah.
right? So craving for happiness
It's great.
is actually is avidya, right? I mean,
No.
it is there with you.
It's
I
not
mean, you
avidya.
are-
Avidya is ignorance.
Yeah, correct. But then it's actually with you. You don't have to crave for it. You are happy. You're full of happiness always.
Are
It's just a matter that you forgot that.
Are you always full of happiness?
It's just a matter that you forgot that.
No,
Now,
but are you
craving-
always full of happiness?
Whether you crave for it or not, that's a different story, right? I mean, but you are. I mean, if you are the spirit, your true nature, possibly you're always happy. I mean,
But then are you always happy? I'm asking
No,
you.
no.
Okay. So we have to crave to bring it out. It's subdued. But you have to do some action. Bhakti is an activity. You have to bring it out. Why? Because I don't have it. If I rest on my laurels, always within, that's not going to yield the experience of happiness, right? I have to bring it out. Just like a child is born with the ability to walk, but it still has to put forth the effort to practice the walking to bring out that ability. It can't just sit there and say, I can walk. I'm walking. No, you have to do it. Same thing. Happiness lies within. Yes, happiness comes from within, not from without, no doubt. But it is experienced through action, through the activity of bhakti that comes out. And we experience it. So the search or craving, to use the word you're saying, the craving for happiness is the intrinsic nature of who we are. We cannot fight that. We cannot change that. That is who we are. Because Krishna wants us to be happy. He doesn't want us to be unhappy. He said, why you should be unhappy? I am always happy. Why my created being should not also be always happy? But he is not going to force his happiness upon us. So we have made decisions that have led us down a path of experiencing all kinds of slaps. Now, I may be in denial. No, there's not slaps. I'm not getting slapped in my material endeavors. Okay, that is our individual right to say, no, that's not true, and carry on. But if you step back and analyze objectively, you'll see every person around us is pursuing and getting slapped. But we think, I'm not getting slapped. But it's actually happening. That's the avidya. I don't see that. So it is a matter of active endeavor to bring it out. It will not happen just there. It will not happen.
Yeah, and the reason I said, the
Yeah, yeah.
notation I had is when you crave for it or when you do actions to achieve it, then the next set of question comes, the means. And when the means come, then you have something called as right means, then you have something called as wrong means.
Yeah.
Because you can get the happiness by wrong means also because of ignorance. Then you have to choose between the right means of achieving happiness and then wrong means of achieving happiness, and then again the decisions need to come, and then
Yeah.
which is right way, and then
And those decisions, we come one when we know all of our options and we have intelligence to know. And the criteria by which we'll make those decisions is which will give me more happiness. I'm going to choose path A or path B on one criteria. I'm going to choose my engagement in senses. Path A or path B only on one criteria. Which will give me more happiness. That's the only criteria I'll choose. Even if I choose this path because it's good, it's the right thing to do, that will break at some point if it doesn't give me more happiness. Eventually, the temptations will allure me away. So I may follow artificially for some period of time because my mother told me to. Whatever. Some social need, something will drive me there. But eventually, if there's not a higher taste, back. That's enough.
yeah, and then therefore it again comes back to why it takes so much time to get that higher taste, because we follow that for the period of time, as you said, just by the forceful means, and if you don't get that, again,
You give me 30 days of your life. Just 4 hours a week. You'll experience it. That's the invest. You have 168 hours in the week. I am asking for 4. Then you decide if that's an investment you want to make. And then after 30 days, you decide. It won't be long. If I go to the gym and I wonder why the body is not changing, why it's taking so long, it's not the gym's issue. It's what am I doing in the application of the principles within that gym that determine it. Right? Same thing in bhakti. So for some it happens very fast. And others it happens very slow. That's okay. We each have the right to choose the own path, the own accelerator. But if we want it to happen fast, there are the means for it to happen fast. If you desire to experience the taste quickly, it can happen. It can happen. And if you desire to, no problem. That can also happen. That is our individual choice.
Yeah.
But know definitively, if you want to experience it fast, it can be had. It can be had. But you have to go with some faith, as Prabhuji mentioned, some enthusiasm, and some confidence. And it will happen. Okay?
Yeah.
Nice discussion. No, it's good. We all have these internal debates, so it's nice to bring them out because we have them, even within our own mind. You have both sides speaking, right? We have them, so don't be shy.
Well, on a lighter note, I have 4 hours. I have double than that. Any hours, I can do. The end goal is, if that thing, I have
Very
full
nice.
time.
You come for Bhaktivedanta, you come to Sunday temple, you render some service, you enjoy the festivals.
By the way,
Very simple.
I happens to visit Vrindavan temple.
Mm.
I never thought of it. but
In India?
Yeah, I happens. I got pulled by it. So on the way, I happens to go there and visit. So
That is only
and
Krishna's
without
arrangement.
consciousness. I mean,
Yeah.
without anything. I didn't want it to honestly. Because
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
planned.
Yeah.
I just got pulled. I happens to be there and happens to visit.
That is Krishna's arrangement. That is that can only happen with Krishna's arrangement, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I told It happens to be there. I never thought.
Yeah.
I've never realized also that I'm in Vrindavan, I'm going to temple, but I just got pulled into it.
That's amazing. You have some great fortune. Now capitalize on that fortune. You have a big blessing. How many of us have been to Vrindavan? You know, it's rare. Rare. So, that's a great blessing.
So in this, the problem is like in this bhakti process, we are mixing the matter in that. That is where we get our senses deviated. Whereas like, because the pure, I don't know what to use the word, but because I'm doing the spiritual, thing with some other matter in my mind to happen. So that is where we get that deviation, okay?
So Krishna says in 7th chapter, what is matter? Where it comes from? It is apara shakti. Just everything we see is para or apara shakti.
External.
Matter is Krishna's inferior energy. So now when you see matter, I don't want you to see matter. I want you to see what Krishna says. That's Krishna as his inferior energy. So if it's Krishna's energy, how are you going to use that matter? In Krishna's service. So now as a devotee, when are you in? Not spiritual, not connected to Krishna. We're always connected. But we didn't see that, right? Krishna says, I am everything. Apara and para shakti. So the devotee doesn't see spirit and matter. He sees everything as an energy of Krishna and how to use that in the service of Krishna. So there's no matter, material affairs in the bhakti. No, there is a use of matter, use of Krishna's apara shakti in pleasing Krishna. But there's no material desires in bhakti. So, how to be pure in bhakti doesn't mean I have to insulate myself from matter. No, I live within matter. But I see this is Krishna's energy. This computer, TV, this tape is all Krishna's energy. So I see it in relation to Krishna. And I use it in relation to Krishna. That's the vision Krishna will give us in the 7th chapter. And he goes on to say, not only that, he says, I am the essence of everything. When you drink a glass of water, when you are very thirsty, what do you want to drink? The only thing that will quench your thirst is water. You'll drink something else, still you'll be thirsty. Krishna says, I am the taste of water. That which quenches your taste, your thirst in the water, that is me. How subtle he is and how non-subtle he is. He's everything. Even the taste of water he is. The heat and fire, that is Krishna. So, that's how we have to see, I am always connected to Krishna. Right? Now, just as it's difficult to see, I am this spirit soul, not this body, sometimes we forget I'm seeing matter around me as Krishna. So in our workforce, in the workplace, I don't see pictures of Krishna. I don't hear kirtan. I don't see deities of Krishna. But I can remember. I see matter. And that is an inferior energy of Krishna. Krishna is here in his inferior energy. Now how I'm going to use this in the service of Krishna. And in this way the devotee says, I don't care if I am in the spiritual world or the hellish planet. As long as I can remember you, I'm okay. because they are always in by remembrance connected to Krishna. We can start to see there's no matter in bhakti, right? There's no matter.
So like this kind of reminds me the last week I was with my daughter in temple. I was about to leave, so I said to my daughter like, I'll just go and see and come. Then I came to the shoe rack and put my shoe, and she said like, why did you went there? I just touched this wall, and then I said, I have seen the Krishna name. So like, I was so then I realized that her evening class, that 5 o'clock class, is like how much that she has taken, like where I don't even have. I was like, okay.
The kids come to these realization. You know why? Because they don't have the ego and the doubts and the conditioning. There's a pure heart. That's why when we teach them at a younger age, this foundation develops. Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Vaishnavinda.